I've been working on having more patience. I've been working on being more gracious. Can't kill myself for the time I wasted. Learn lessons come with elevation. I've been working on having more patience. I've been working on being more gracious. Can't kill myself for the time I wasted. Learn lessons come with elevation. I'm on a mission to achieve some greatness.
What is going on? How you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
So before we get started, I want to thank everybody for joining. Of this is the fifth episode of Lived Experiences, and today we have Coach Kim with us. Coach Kim, did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I am Coach Kimberly Houston. I am a transformational life coach. I specifically walk women entrepreneurs, especially single mothers, through the process of believing in themselves when they want to step into entrepreneurship, and really getting over the limiting beliefs that they can't do it without someone else. So I co voyage with women and men through the process of wanting more in their lives and manifesting more. So that's what I do.
Awesome. So tonight's subject is arguing with a purpose.
Mhm.
So I titled it that way because I feel that most people, when they argue, they aren't arguing. Well, the term arguing, it has a negative connotation attached to
Yeah.
it. But most people, they're not even trying to understand what is going on in the situation. They just want to have their point heard and to be right
Yes.
rather than trying to solve the problem. How do you feel?
So I do a lot of work with this as a transformational life coach because it's not just about entrepreneurship, it's about who you are as a person.
Yes.
And I'm currently studying robust relationships
Mhm.
and how do you have deeper, more meaningful relationships. And that comes down to fighting, right? Like, what
Yeah.
does effective arguing look like? And it's
Yeah.
not, you know, you were right or I was wrong. It's not the blame game. It is understanding like what is it that you really want? Like what underlying need needs to be met right now? Because most
Yes.
surface level fights, that's not why you're fighting. Like,
Hmm.
it's not because, they didn't empty the dishwasher or something. Like, that's not why
Yeah.
you're fighting. Like, you're fighting because there's been little things that have been adding up. Or honestly, one of the things that I've been really digging into lately is what is it about this person that reminds you of someone from your past that you have unfinished business with?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we are taking our emotion out on someone who didn't do it to us in the first place. You
Uh-huh.
just did something that
Yeah.
triggered that memory. And now I am going to like come after you like you're the person who did it. But that's not who did it to you. So that is where I have been for the last couple of weeks is how do you dig into the heart of why are you triggered?
Yeah. And that's deep because again, most people, they like, so the way you put it, like they're not even arguing with the person that's in front of them. They're arguing
Yeah.
with the person from their past who's behind them, which is,
Yes.
to me, that's like mind blowing.
It is, and both people do that.
Yeah.
So, like you learn the things or you learn the triggers. You know what things tick off your wife. You know
Hmm.
what things, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah. Yeah.
know if you say this, then she's gonna be really upset about that, right? And she knows that
Yeah.
about you too. But that's unfinished business that both people have with someone else. And
Yeah.
until you can like sit down like an adult and be like, okay, listen, what's
Hmm.
coming up for me right now is my father used to talk to my mother like this,
Yeah.
or I saw, my grandfather say something to my mother like this, whatever. And this is how it makes me feel when you do XYZ. And so one of the things that I have started using is historically, I would respond by doing whatever. But
Hmm.
right now, I don't want to do that. Right now, I want to choose a new way to respond to this trigger. And that it kind of stops the fight almost. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Like, what you just say? Like, wait. Back up, back up, back up. And then you're no longer dealing with whatever the little petty thing was.
Yeah.
Now you're dealing with, let's have a deep conversation so that we can have, or we can establish a better relationship between the two of us. So it's playing fair,
Hmm.
but getting deep. So yeah, it's fun.
So you as a coach, do you recommend that in the middle of arguing, you kind of find a way to catalog what triggered you, and then you can go back to try to figure it out?
Yeah, I think that depending on like whoever the person is, like for me, I'm not gonna argue with you. Like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give you that type of energy. Like I am the person who's gonna be like, you know what, I need a minute and I'm gonna walk away. That will trigger people if they want to argue with you. Like that is a problem. If you're like, yeah, I can't do this right now. I need a minute. And then we can have this conversation. Like I need you to calm down and then we can do this. So you have to know who you're talking to. That's you need to know your audience. Um, I am a Virgo, so there are moments in my life where I have been very petty and I do it on purpose. The Lord is not done with me, right? So I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
work on that where it's like, okay, listen, you're heated, I'm heated. I don't want to say something that's going to go left. So
Yeah.
how about we take like a 5-10 minute recess? We're
Hmm.
going to take a break. We're going to put a pin in it. Write down how you feel right now.
Yeah.
And then in 10 minutes, let's come back and have this discussion because me arguing with you when essentially your amygdala hijacks you, right? So you
Hmm.
lose
Yeah.
all common sense in the middle of this fight. Okay, let's let your nervous system calm down. And then we can come back and have this conversation. So what is it that you so like even with my coaching sessions, I start them by asking, what would you like to come out of today's conversation?
Yes.
Because what are we talking about, right? Like you can tell me everything you want to tell me, but what's our end goal? So the same thing in a fight. It's like, okay, 5-10 minutes, let's take a break and then write down whatever it is you think I'm not hearing. Because
Hmm.
that's typically why we're fighting, is that you don't
Yeah.
feel heard or you don't feel seen or you feel like you don't matter. So
Hmm.
if you can like what we call bottom line it, where we can
Yeah.
just get to the point, say the story, get to the point. What is it that you need from this? Then we can work backwards and go, okay, so why do you feel like you're not seen or why do you feel like you're not heard? And then you work on that going forward.
It's crazy because even when you're in the middle, you can be face to face with the person and they don't hear the words that come out of your mouth. They hear the words that they choose to hear. And
Yeah.
you're like, I never said those things. Like I know
Mhm.
for me, when I argue with my wife, I just be like, I'm a very literal person. Take me at my word. Don't take me
Mhm.
at what you think I'm saying. I need you
Yeah,
to.
I never said that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it gets to the point where, you have to find a way to communicate. And again, it goes back, I think it goes back to understanding that this person is reacting from this conversation from their point of view.
Mhm.
And because I'm trying to communicate with that person, I need to try and understand that point of view so I can effectively communicate better. But
Yeah.
most
It
times we're so wrapped up in ourselves. It's like, I'm not worried about what you were trying to say. I need you to
right.
shut up and listen to my point because I'm
Yeah.
right and you're wrong. So it
Yeah.
gets to that point most of the time.
And even when we do that, it's still, what am I trying to get out of this?
Yeah.
Right? So for one person, it may be like you're not listening to me. It means I don't feel heard. Like you're not understanding what I'm saying to you. Or if I keep talking over you, it's like I want to be seen. Like I'm
Yeah.
causing drama right now because I want you to see me. And if you can't step back into, okay, I am having a moment right now, and
Yeah.
I need to go sit down. And I know every person is not a life coach. And so therefore they're not running through all these steps in their head. Like, hold on, my amygdala has been hijacked. I am saying things I should not be saying. Like the average person is not doing that, right?
Right.
When you know that like your body is telling you this is going left, when you feel out of control, when you feel your face get hot, when you
Mhm.
start doing this, when your hands are
Yeah.
like taking over the conversation, as soon as you notice all of these things happening, that's when you go, wait a minute.
Mhm.
I think we've gone a little beyond the
Yeah.
conversation we were having because now it's getting incredibly heated for no reason, right?
Yeah.
And we look at that even with like instances of violence. Like it just did
Mhm.
not have to escalate that quickly. And you're like, well, what was the trigger? Like, what is this?
Yeah. How did we
And
get here? Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, well, wait, like this. I just wanted you to take trash out. Like, how we get here, right? So then it becomes and I think when you're not in the middle of the fight is when you have the conversations.
Yeah.
Like, so tell me what's the most effective way for you to hear me? Like in those moments where you're just like Netflix and chilling,
Mhm.
you start to establish the ground rules for fighting
Yeah.
because it's healthy to have these conversations and it's natural for us to argue. What's not natural is that we're yelling at the top of our lungs and no one ever gets their point across.
Yeah, because once it reaches that point, you're not able to have a productive conversation. I always suggest when I am talking to people, I say you keep your hands to yourself and understand that it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. It's your tone, the sarcasm,
Mhm.
the talking down to. And it's a lot of things. It's a multitude of things that you have to learn how to project. So and I think it goes back to our childhood. A lot of times we model the way
Yep.
that we saw our parents or other people argue.
Yeah.
So when it comes, I personally think that it's okay to not have to finish the argument in one day.
Yeah.
Like I'm the type, I'm like, you let me cool off, let me go to the gym, let me grab something to eat. I'll talk to you when I can think clearly,
Mhm.
and don't disturb my peace in between time. Like we can talk, whatever, but that
Yeah.
specific subject is off limits until I can mentally handle that load.
Yeah. And I think if you establish that up front, then it
Mhm.
becomes a part of the process. I think where
Yeah.
we go wrong is that we don't ever establish this. So it's
Mm.
like, no two boxers are going in a ring without rules. They
Yeah.
have established rules before they start beating each other, right?
Right.
And so it's like, well, we need to do that as people. Like,
Mhm.
we need to have these established rules that are like, if I start rolling my eyes or whatever, and you are instantly triggered by me rolling my eyes,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
conversation needs to end. Like,
So
it
yeah.
doesn't matter
Yeah.
what we're talking about. This conversation is now over because now physically I'm showing you no longer matter or your
Hmm.
opinion is not important. And that's how you're reading my body language. And
Yeah.
so that's where it's like, okay, we need to, this is how you know when you can't, I'm no longer listening to you. Like I'm rolling my
Hmm.
eye. Or
Yeah.
worst case scenario, I picked up my cell phone.
Mm.
Like little things like that. It's like I know you hear me talking to you. Like I
Yeah.
know you hear me talking to you, but now you're going to invalidate my feelings, which will instantly make me feel like a little kid who was to be seen and not heard.
Right. You know what? One of my biggest triggers are my
What?
big my biggest trigger is me being wholeheartedly serious and someone laughing while I'm being serious. To me, that takes me from 0 to 100. After I can't tolerate
Yeah,
it.
that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that's my son. Yeah, we've had that conversation.
And you know, for some people, it's their way of reacting to stress. It's not that they're checking out, but to me, in my head, what comes to my mind is, I think this is laughable. This situation
Yeah.
is laughable, and you're laughable. So it's like I once you laugh at me, I'm like I have to exit. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you another day.
It's I've talked to people who that's their instant reaction, is like that's how they're controlling their nervous system.
Hmm.
And mine as a kid was I would start breathing really, really deeply, but it would
Hmm.
be like, and I had to
Hmm.
learn how to lose the air in the jaws because
Okay.
that was a trigger for other people. So when
Hmm.
you start, breathing deeply, just very slowly, and you can't tell I'm breathing deeply,
Hmm.
I'm calming myself, but you're not being triggered by me calming myself. So it's
Yeah.
those self-soothing practices um that I also tell my clients, like, okay, listen, like if you see this coming, there's some things you need to be doing for yourself. So whether it's like, you're rubbing your fingers, or some people like to tap, like they'll start
Mhm.
tapping like this.
Yeah.
Because these pressure points, especially in your face, like right here,
Yeah.
will help calm you down immediately. Like we
Wow.
teach a lot of kids to do that.
Yeah.
Um, because then it helps you, like your body literally starts responding to this vibration,
I didn't know
and
that.
your body will start to calm down. That way, I am paying attention to you. Like I'm
Yeah.
listening to you, I'm fully present with you, and I'm gonna let you say what you need to say. And then when it's my turn to say something to you, if I start to feel triggered in any way, like you're not listening to me or something like that, this may start up again, because that vibration sends a message to my brain, we need to calm back down.
Gotcha.
So there's lots of little like self-soothing techniques that people can use when they are arguing, um, that just kind of help you get to the point of what you need to get to without going left.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important parts, like you said, is the rules of engagement. Everything has rules. I
Mhm.
know, for example, my wife, her trigger word is the word bitch. Yeah. So I know whenever, regardless of what I am, whatever comes out of my mouth, it better not be that word.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah.
But there were times, when we first started dating, there were times when I was trying to get a reaction out of her, and I wouldn't say it at her, but I'd be like, "You're
Yeah.
acting like." I wouldn't call her one, but yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like I knew that that was like a foot on the line, but not all the way over.
You can cross it.
Yeah, so it was like, if just to get a reaction, and that's something that I had to learn. Like, that's wrong. You don't do
Yeah.
that to people.
Don't be do it.
Yeah, like it's don't tempt people. Don't test people's boundaries.
Yeah. And I think even in your rules of engagement, there are boundaries. Like some
Hmm.
things we're just not going to talk about.
Yes.
We're just not. And until I
Hmm.
give you permission, or I give myself permission to be vulnerable enough to share this with you, we're not
Yeah.
going there. Like some things are just off limits and we're not going to deal with that. And that's a rule of engagement, right? So
Hmm.
like even as a parent talking to my 20-year-old son, I'm never going to say something like you're acting like your father.
Uh,
That is there's no, if I say that, he's not listening to me. Like it's
yeah.
over. Like we're not having any other conversation. And not that his father is not a nice person. It's whatever his perception of his father is, not
Mhm.
me. And
Yeah.
so we have to take those things into account. Like I'm just never going to say that. Like even if
Mm.
I feel it coming, I'm like, mm,
Yeah.
never. It's just not worth where this conversation will go if I say that. But yes, we do act like people from our past because they were the foundational stones that we were built upon. But as an adult, you have a choice. And like I tell people all the time, choose a new thought.
And I
If
I feel I feel like when that boundary's coming, because before you say it, you'd be like,
about it.
and then you just be like, "No, I'm gonna say it anyway." So it's
Yep.
like you knew what you did was wrong, but you still did it anyway.
Yeah. And for me, that feels like a breach of trust, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
one of the things that because a lot of people who want to work with me are polar opposite of me.
Yeah.
And so that's a trigger for me. Like, I need you not to if you give me excuses, I don't want to work
Mhm.
with you anymore. And
Yeah.
so a lot of people who work with me, they are people who are people pleasers. And so a lot of times they have excuses as to why they couldn't do something. And I'm like, well, that doesn't work for me. So
Yeah.
we have to establish an agreement in the beginning. Understand, I'm not going to take your excuse. If you do negative self talk, I need you to choose a new thought. Like, it's easy. Just choose a new thought. You're not terrible. You're not a horrible person. Choose a new thought. You're a fairy if you want to be. Choose a new thought. Tell your brain something different. And so when you do that consistently, you begin to wire your brain differently. And then
Yes.
you don't fight like that anymore because
Mhm.
that's just not how you're wired. You literally can change the wiring in your brain by choosing a new thought. So I'm
Yeah.
always like, choose a new thought, please. Like,
Yeah.
whatever you were about to say, choose a new thought before you do that. Let's think about it real hard before you say it.
And
Is
then
is there another
I,
reason why?
I know this is backtracking a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that, not necessarily fascinating, but it's definitely interesting that what soothes me and stops me from boiling over
Mhm.
may be the same trigger that causes someone else to boil over.
Yeah.
So in that situation, how do you manage staying productive when what I'm doing to soothe myself sets someone else off?
So, like, if you were going to the gym, but if I felt like you going to the gym is now an abandonment thing.
Mm,
So this is an attachment issue, right?
okay.
So if what you need to do to calm yourself down feels like something negative to me, that's a me problem, not a you problem.
Okay.
So for me, that means I am now dealing with some sort of attachment issue from my past.
Mhm.
And so typically, whenever I would feel that, it's like, again, I'm to the point now where I will go journal it. Why do I feel like this? And I'm gonna go through the process in my head, like, okay, boom, 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 boom. My daddy didn't do something. My daddy didn't. I was just throwing it out. But that's typically like what it is, right? If you're like, I need to go to the gym to like work this out before you and I have this conversation, establish that in your rules of engagement.
Yeah.
I need space and time to go work out so that I don't say the wrong thing. It does not mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean I don't want to engage with you. It means I need space.
Gotcha.
That's all it means. It doesn't mean anything else. That's it. So when I go do that, what will you be filling your time with? That way you're both doing something at the same time where
Yeah.
she can calm down, you can calm down. And then you come back together and have that conversation.
So it's kind of like having like pre-argument conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like,
Okay.
those are the rules of engagement. Like,
Yeah.
if we gonna fight fair. But
Yeah.
here are the things we're gonna do. Then that way I'm not offended that you went to the gym, or I'm not gonna think that you went to see another woman while
Mhm.
you went to the gym. Like,
Yeah.
we're not leaving that space open. And so for her, it may be go take the hottest shower you can possibly take for 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Whatever music you need to play, that way you calm yourself down, write out what your points are. And when we come
Yeah.
back together, let's have this conversation. That's no longer an argument.
Yes.
And then it's productive.
I think that I saw this online. It's the most simplest concept, but I think it misses so many of us. It's not me versus you. It's me and you versus the problem.
Mhm.
So when you understand that I am not fighting against my wife.
Right.
What is coming? It goes back to finding the underlying issues, so that way we can attack the underlying issues together.
Yeah.
And it just makes everything more easier to deal with. So, and I think when you can get your point across productively, you make it so that way you're not in that situation again. Because if we're
Right.
just yelling, we're not understanding each other. Because
No.
because when you yell at me, I don't care what you have to say. I just have a rebuttal for you.
Or
So,
there is no rebuttal. I'm just not
Yeah.
gonna say anything.
yeah, yeah.
And now you mad because I won't talk. Well, you won't be quiet. Like that's how my brain works. It's kind of like, but you won't be
Yeah.
quiet. And then understanding who the person is. So if they are a feelings first, I am not a feelings first person, if you
Mhm.
can't tell. My emotions are not going to get in the way of our argument. I'm giving you fact.
Yeah.
I'm never going to raise my voice because before we have this conversation, I've already Googled everything.
Mhm.
Right? It's like a parent. You're never going to ask a question without knowing the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're to this point where I've asked you a question, I already know the answer. Like, just go ahead and say what you have to say. But some people are very emotional and they care about people and they care about feelings. And so that's when you really establish that boundary that, hey, listen, before we engage in this,
Mhm.
these are the rules of this. If it gets too heated, if one of us doesn't feel comfortable, what is your safe word?
Yeah.
What is the word that you need to use to tap out? And
Oh,
and
that's good.
then we've already established what we're doing when we tap out.
Yeah.
We're taking 5 or 10 minutes to go walk around the block or go take a shower or whatever it is you need to do in order to calm back down. And then while you're separate, think about what is the actual point of this argument?
Yeah.
Like, what do I want from this? And then come back together and say, all right, look, this is all I need from this. And it could be 3 very simple things. And then you're like, well, me too.
Yeah. And
And
oftentimes you'll find that you're trying to get to the same goal. You're just
yep,
going about it two separate ways.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So putting those, like establishing the rules of engagement. I don't think people should not fight. I think that's crazy. You should.
Mhm.
Like you need to be heard or you need to be seen or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But also fight fair.
Yes.
Like don't be a bully in this fight. Like we're here for a common goal. So what is it?
Yeah. Like Latia said, and not just in business, but in life, she said, be firm but fair. And
Yeah.
I think you can apply that to every aspect of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Parenting, hold on.
I want people to understand that arguing isn't a bad thing. It's how you go about getting your point across. And it's okay to not do it all in one session. I think it could be, for some people, it's like therapeutic. I'm trying to uncover things about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that all in one session. No, you can't sit down and, Jesus was on the hill for 40 days.
Right.
So like if he didn't do it all at once, what makes you think you can? It's understanding that the problem is the problem, not the person. The person isn't the problem.
Yeah. And I think that's so huge. And the more people can know that,
Mhm.
then the biggest thing that I learned in the last week or so was there are no such thing as generational curses, they're generational choices. And I was like, what? And they were like, every generation does what they can do to the best of their ability. So if you decide to have a cycle, that was a choice. And I was like,
Yeah, that's deep.
well, okay then. That means I'm gonna fight a little differently. I don't have to fight the way my mama and daddy fought. I don't
Yeah.
have to. This is a choice
Mhm.
that I can say, I don't want my marriage to look like that. I can do
Yeah.
something different, or I don't want my friendships to look like that, or I don't want a parent like this. Choose a new thought.
Mhm.
And then you do different things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Coach Kim, thank you for your time. You've been amazing.
Absolutely.
Can you tell the people where to find you at?
Absolutely. So I have a blog called thekimberlyiniece.com, or you can look up the Visionary Catalyst on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok. I'm on all the places. Uh, talking about all the things super fun, entrepreneurship, changing your mindset, and manifestation.
All right. So y'all make sure y'all book y'all session with Coach Kim so she can get y'all right.
Yes, right there.
Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate all the wisdom that you imparted on us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Have a good night.
You too.